Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads. You haven't seen him in a while, but with me as always is my main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reg?
Man, Ken, it's been a minute. It has been a minute that your boys have been together.
Yeah.
But as they say, we back.
Yeah. We doing some traveling for work and just life and a little bit of the slow part of the year. I mean, obviously we had a lot of changes with just about everything other than ownership. Right. Since we last talked, pretty much everything other than ownership, and that's going to continue in this offseason. But a new GM, a new head coach, new coordinators, new a lot of things, including the stadium, right?
Yeah, man. Well, to your point, we've been lifing, as people like to say. We've been adulting.
Yeah.
As some of us people our age like to say. But it's just kind of the slow part of the year, man. And as we've done in the past, we took a little break as well. And but when you get to the slow part of football season, man, it's not a whole lot to talk about. Now you can get on Twitter, and let me tell you, they will talk about the same shit over and over and over. All the Twitter GMs can tell you right now which quarterback sucks. They can tell you which quarterback we're gonna take. They're reading the tea leaves, and it's like nobody knows.
Predicting who's going to be a bust.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And I'm just refusing to engage in a lot of that stuff, because here's the thing. One thing this new ownership has done is proven that they are not going to be leaking stories. So if the beat reporters who's got sources in the locker room come on their platform and say we're not sure, I know damn well that Sage1234 on Twitter has no idea what the hell the Commanders are gonna do. Okay. And if there's a Sage123 on Twitter, I just pulled it. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, Johnny Commander doesn't have, right.
Johnny Commander changed the name.com guy that has no clue what the hell the Commanders are going to do in this draft. But nonetheless, I've just tried to stay out of a lot of the rhetoric going back and forth about who they're going to sign, who they're going to draft, whether they're going to trade up, whether trading back is the worst team, the best team, running it back with Sam Howell. It's just every day the same nonsense. It's like, just wait.
Right.
Just wait.
We can touch on some of that. That's worthy of having a conversation. But
not every day, Ken. Not every day.
I understand. I'm talking about on the podcast here today. But I'm starting at a high level, and as I come in on because like I said, it's been a minute since we've had our last podcast. We were guests on another podcast, and
BG Obsession.
Yes, we were with the BGO, and they were good guys to hang out with, and had a good time on the podcast. But with our direct audience, we haven't had some of this conversation. So it's not necessarily in order, but from a high perspective, as we zoom in on Washington and the field. First off, it's no longer FedEx Field, right? Who cares? The only people that care are the ownership that's going to get paid or not going to get paid. FedEx decided to step out. They were paying $7.5 million a year. They had 2 years left, and they opted out. I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to get more than $7.5 million. The ownership is not complaining about this at all. It's some extra work for them to do, right? They're going to be scrambling to do some extra work, but I'm going to tell you right now, they're getting more than $7.5 million.
But will they though? Will they struggle?
No. When I say struggle, I mean all of a sudden the sales reps the Jason Wrights and the people that fall under him on that side of the house may or may not have been prepared. And so if they weren't, all of a sudden they're reaching out to their big sponsorships and get it done.
Nope, I don't think so. I'm gonna tell you how this is gonna go, Ken. I don't know what the name of the stadium is gonna be. It may not even be a cool name, right? And I'm just gonna go out and say it with all of the gambling sites and crypto.coms and all the stuff that's out there. The name may not be cool, and it's probably not gonna roll off our tongues the way FedEx Field used to for the past many years. But here's the thing: if FedEx had pulled out with Dan Snyder and Dan and his crew were trying to find a sponsor, we'd be roadside.com field for for the upcoming season. But with Josh Harris and all those resources that he, Rails, and all of those guys have, and the connection and the excitement around new ownership, they'll have a new sponsorship and name for that stadium here in no time. In fact, it might be an opportunity for someone to get in on the front end with the next few years at the current stadium in hopes of having the name on the new stadium. So this is a blip in the road. They may not have seen it coming, but this is a blip in the road, because for those that aren't aware, the way or how FedEx was able to get out of their deal was in the contract was if there was an ownership change. And so since we had an ownership change, that allowed FedEx to opt out of the deal, and they took the opportunity to do so. Good for them. Good for them. That's what they want to do. But the name will change. I can't say it's going to be a cool field name, but it will change, and I don't think they're going to have any problems getting getting someone to sign up for the naming rights on that stadium.
Yeah, I think pulling back the curtains a little bit, Reggie and I had some discussions of the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads sponsoring the stadium, but we just couldn't get it worked out. And maybe at the new stadium, we'll put our nickels together and we'll get some sponsors.
Jason Wright played hardball. I'm a fan of Jason Wright. I know Twitter's not a fan of Jason Wright, but personally I am. Ken is not. And that's why I went to the meeting with Jason.
Reggie was our representative.
Yeah, he played a little hardball, and we just couldn't quite get there on the price, man. And he said, if you can get Ken to come around, I might drop the price. But Ken played hardball too, so we were not able to work out a deal to get our name on the new stadium.
But we will have our name on a hot dog stand, though. We will be having that. So that was a high level, right? And as we're zooming down, we talked. Obviously, we had new ownership from last year, but everything that ownership has changed. They're going to be changing the name of the field. They've also changed GM and all the coaching staff.
Well, before that, there's a report that came out, I think it was today, about the new changes to the stadium.
To the stadium itself, yeah.
At the stadium, that there's some upgrades, because the lease, I think, runs through 2027. I think is when it runs through, and so they wanted to continue to invest the money with the fan experience and everything. And so with that, the report goes on. Let's see if I can find it here. But the report goes on and talked about how that by the time they finish with all of the upgrades, the new ownership will have invested about $75 million in upgrades. And some of those things would include fast entry to the stadium. They're going to get premium seatings. They're going to
sewage pipes. Sewage pipes getting fixed and repaired.
They're going to work on all of that, man. Okay. They're going to improve the food and beverage options at the stadium. Something like having drink lanes, which for someone like myself who, once I eat one time in the stadium, I just might want something to drink, and I don't want to stand in the food line. So having drink lanes, having a drink lane, which allow people to get in and out and back to their seats. They're going to continue to upgrade the sound system. And one of the cool things that they talked about doing, I'm not really into doing that, but some people will. Well, there's this VIP area down on the field that will be near the tunnel that will allow fans to be near the players as they run out on the field.
Okay.
Some people will buy it, If you give me the free access, I'm there and I'm all for it. But I'm probably not going to pay just to watch John Allen run past me on his way to the field. Just not going to do it.
Well, that was part of the negotiation you had with Jason Wright, and he wouldn't back off and just give us a couple passes, all the money that we were spending on the naming rights. So we had to step away. But yes, and I guess along with that, there's going to be a rebranding of the name of the field. But if I'm to include all the coaching changes, the management changes, the GM changes, there's the opportunity, because we're seeing it in the NBA.
Oh,
there's a
come on, man.
I haven't even said it, and
already
it's given to me. Come on, man. The rebranding.
Hang on.
Rebranding of the Washington Commanders.
I didn't know you was going to bring this up.
I know you didn't. And this is for those that don't know, the LA Clippers, they're still the LA Clippers, right? But they're changing their logos and their brands. So it does happen. And I'm hopeful that we treat the W that we currently have for the Washington Commanders as we did the R for the Redskins, where it's there, but it's not our front-facing main logo. And we come up with an actual new logo. Again, this is part of the change. I'm telling you right now, bold prediction, it's going to happen.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're advocating for a change in some more additional logo-ish stuff, but you're not advocating for the change from Commanders. Is that what I understand here?
Look, I've never been excited about the name Commanders. Okay?
I understand, but what are you specifically referring to here?
I'm referring to the logo itself, not the name change. I have a feeling that while there is a feeling and the idea of possible changing it, I think in the long run they're going to have the discussion if they haven't already had it. I'm sure they already have had it, but they're going to decide not to go with it. But they are going to change the logo and not just have a letter. They're going to have something they can sell, something you can market, something that gets the fans excited, right? A lot of the changes they've had have brought excitement to the team. It may not happen this year. It probably isn't going to happen this year, right? Because you got to put in for it, and the NFL needs to approve it and all. But it will happen, and it's part of the change. It's part of everything that Washington is doing. So
okay, whatever. I just know that until they finally come out and announce what they're planning to do regarding the name, whether that is decision has been made to keep it, or decision has been and continue to expand on the logo, or decide to go away and could do a complete rebrand with a new name and all that, your boy's not buying any more merch. It's just not happening.
And I understand. And I will say, for those that want an actual name change, just remember, okay, I'm not excited about the Commanders. I can live with the Commanders, but it could be worse. You could change your name to something like the Pelicans, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of worse names. There was a lot of bad names on that list.
But we'll use the example in the modern day that New Orleans changed their name and decided to go with the Pelicans. In today's day, I'll take the Commanders over the Pelicans 365 days a year.
Yes.
So,
and I'm shocked that you brought up the name change, but we've already spent too much time on it.
Well,
it's terrible.
But it's happening now. Now it's happening. All right. Oh, you heard it here first, people. Can we go to the managerial changes at this point?
Let's get
that we
to it.
haven't talked about in the past. We'll I know
Let's get
everybody
to it.
knows about it. So head
But what
and,
people don't
and I'll let
know,
you and I'll
but
let you talk. Go ahead.
what people don't know
Yeah.
is what Big Kenny thinks about it.
Well,
That's
I
what
was going
people
to
don't know.
I was going to go from ask you, GM, head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Those are the big hires. Overall, from the coaching staff, if you had to give it a grade, or we could even go with the what's your name, what's your number on the confidence level of this coaching staff.
Oh my God. I have a little bit to say about this whole coaching staff thing. Let me see if I can gather all my thoughts, because it's been a while since we've addressed it. Let me just first say this, man. Again, I find it interesting that everybody, from the most part, 90% of the fan base was excited about the Adam Peters hire.
Yep.
And they're cool with Adam until Adam does something they don't want to do. And one of those first move was the hiring of Dan Quinn. And immediately there were people who were, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And for those people, you just want to slap him, right?
Right.
It's like you believe in the guy, you want him, but you only want to support him if he makes a decision that's in line with what you want him to do. I've maintained that this ownership, this coaching staff, they're going to get a free pass for me to do whatever they choose this year, because I believe in everything that they're doing. So I'm not going to doubt them until they give me a reason to doubt them. There may be some things that make me go, maybe a little head scratcher, and that seems a little odd, but hey, maybe they know something I don't know. I'm going to always err on the side of I'm going to trust what they're doing until they show me that they're not. So with that being the case, I know everybody was wanting Ben Johnson. I didn't know a whole lot about Ben Johnson until everybody started screaming his name, and we saw a little bit with Detroit this year. But other than that, he was just a guy. But Dan Quinn became our head coach. And let me tell you, it did not take long for me to realize not only why they chose Dan Quinn, but I'm happy that they chose Dan Quinn. And to go on in this, and when I listened to everything that Dan Quinn talked about, the preparation, the 3 years since being out of Atlanta, and everyone knows about the 360 review that he had performed, and he implemented some of those changes even when he went to Dallas, and what he knew, how he would do things differently when he got a second chance. I love everything about it. I think we're getting a better version of Dan Quinn. The other thing about Dan Quinn that I don't think that Ben Johnson, a lot of the other candidates, with the exception of Raheem Morris, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, and a lot of these other guys slow it down in Houston. None of these guys have been around long enough to have the cachet and the relationships that Dan Quinn. And I think that was an underrated thing about Dan Quinn that I think many of us didn't realize. Dan Quinn has former head coaches and former coordinators on our team who aren't even coordinators. They came and accepted like passing game coordinator on this team. These guys can be coordinators and assistant head coaches on some other teams, but they chose to come to Washington to be position coaches. Says a lot about it. We have several former head coaches, and the level of knowledge and experience that this organization has, I'm ecstatic about it. I was telling a coworker of mine who's a Cowboy fan, and we were just having a true conversation. It wasn't anything from a rival perspective. It was just talking ball. And I told him, I said, the expectation is Washington is going to pick a quarterback at number 2. And I said, if there was ever a time for a young quarterback to come into a situation, this is it. We have Cliff Kingsbury, former quarterback. Tavita Pritchett, former quarterback. Brian Johnson, former quarterback. David Bow, or Ball, however you say his name, former quarterback. That's 4 guys just on the offensive side of the ball, former quarterbacks, and we're not even talking about the head coach. Ben Johnson would have been trying to work with the head coach, along with some coaches that he brought onto his staff. But Dan Quinn has 4 guys on the offensive side of the ball who are former quarterbacks who can do nothing but focus on working and developing a young quarterback. So for me, I think what Dan Quinn has done with his coaching staff, man, has knocked it out of the ballpark. I know everyone seems to be excited. If you listen to any of their interviews, everyone wanted to come and work with Dan Quinn. And I love everything he's put together, even on the defensive side of the ball, man. I'm loving it. Loving it, loving it, loving it. So I'm excited about it.
Very good. Very good. I mean, I don't know how much Dan Quinn paid you for that, but that was it sounded like a paid testimonial. But
I'm all in, man, and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, brother.
I understand. I understand. But nothing you said was wrong, right? I agree pretty much with everything that you say there. And as you to piggyback on, some of the things you said was as you started talking around the league of former players, coaches that have worked with him, coaches that have coached against him, there is nothing but respect for Dan Quinn, and not just respecting him as a man, but they're like, man, Washington is getting one hell of a coach here.
Yes.
And I when we were a guest on the other podcast, and you touched on it briefly, one of the things on Dan Quinn's presser that when he came into Washington, the thing that I liked that caught my attention, because there's going to be all kinds of, coach talk of, we're going to do this, we're going to have it our way, our own attitude and whatever. Every coach says it, right? But the thing that he said that really impressed me was that he stopped at different points for self-evaluation. And I talked about it before that, he didn't, the defense that he ran in Seattle that got him the coaching job in Atlanta, the success getting Atlanta to the Super Bowl, and then moving on to Dallas, and Dallas having a top 5 defense the last couple of years, are not the same defense. Right. He's talked about at different points evaluating and saying, the offenses are growing and evolving. You can't keep running the same defense. You have to stop, look at it, and say, what adjustments do I need to make? And a lot of coaches, they get stuck in, this is what got me to this point. I'm going to keep on doing it, blindly. And that along with his self-evaluation, he self-evaluated on what he could do better if he got the opportunity to be a head coach again. And he kept notes. He kept like a personal journal of, this is what I would do, this is what I wouldn't do. These are people that I would be interested in if they're available to come work with me. And I mean, he had lists. He was prepared. Absolutely. For when he got his opportunity. It didn't just be like, yeah, okay, I'll take it. Okay, now I'm in a mad scramble. He was prepared 6 months before he took this job. And we will see if that ends up being successful, but based off of his track record and his work ethic and his approach to change, evaluation, and getting the best out of himself and others around him, I can't be any happier at this point than what we have with Dan Quinn. And I will say, I think within the next year to 2 years max, Washington, the Dallas Cowboys are going to say that they kept the wrong coach and they should have let McCarthy go and elevated Dan Quinn to head coach. And because Dan Quinn was going to go before, right? Last year and the year before, he was being interviewed, and there's some interest in him, and Jerry Jones came along and gave him more money and a like assistant head coach title and a couple of those things to keep him around and lure him around. And it wasn't the right opportunity for Dan Quinn either. And so I think the things have lined up well for Washington and have lined up for Dan Quinn. And this is a very good hire and very good partnership that we're going to see coming up here.
Yeah, and I'll wrap this up just to kind of bring this full circle, Ken, and say we all know that regardless of who the coaches are, the only thing that's going to matter is wins and losses on the field on Sundays, right?
Yep.
We get that. But the one thing that the situation seems to have for us is giving us the best chance and the best opportunity to turn this thing around and to start having some success on the field, which is not something we've had in a very long time. And back to Dan Quinn being the person and the coach. If you saw the Commander's Log video that was put out recently, Adam Peters and those guys are down at the Senior Bowl, and everybody is talking about congratulating him on hiring DQ. Hell of a guy, great coach, leader of men. You heard the same things all from different people that were congratulating Dan Quinn on the hiring of, Adam Peters on the hiring of Dan Quinn. His former boss in Atlanta, Arthur Blank, called and put in a word for him. Even Jerry Jones put in a word for Dan Quinn to be getting this job. So again, I understand wins and losses, what matters, but man, I'm finally glad that we have someone that I think is going to give us the good chance to turn this thing around. He didn't pull a Ron Rivera and basically bring all of his former coaches that he had before from Carolina and brought them to DC. Dan Quinn essentially has a brand new staff with the exception of maybe a couple of coaches that he had when he was in Dallas.
Right.
So I love it, man. I love the hire. And as time is going on, I like it even more.
Yeah, and Adam Peters and this coaching staff have their hands full. They're inheriting a team, obviously, that only had 4 wins last year, and now it's time. What comes up first is free agency on. That opens up
the combine, and then
we have the combine, right? And that's what is that? That later this week?
No, start this week. Start today. Today was day 1. Yesterday was the arrival of players and everything, and then start today.
And so I think and to your point, I was thinking it started tomorrow because I heard an interview with Adam Peters today talking about. They have a lot of game film on these guys. One of the things that he was eager to do is to have the face-to-face conversations with them. Get a, basically the characteristics that it takes to be an NFL player, right? He's been there talking and done his evaluation to get Dan Quinn and staff, and now he's doing that at the player level. I'm sure there'll be a little surprise here or there as some people's, normally it's your strength and your speed, all of a sudden you're a pinch faster, you're a pinch slower. If you're slower, then you say, oh, well, look at the game film, right? If you're faster, then don't worry about the game film. Just look at my 40 time. Everybody plays it to their advantage or disadvantage, however you want to go there, and all of a sudden you start, bench pressing, 62 times, and people that like that will start talking about it. People that don't go, well, his footwork's bad. He's strong as an ox, but his footwork's bad, right? They have game film on them, so they're going to get this. But as far as actually movement on the team, we get the free agency, and prior
a lot of them.
A lot. Well, got across the whole league, but Washington itself has quite a number of free agents. One thing that we both liked why Ron Rivera was here was he tended to give a lot of short-term contract. There's a lot of 1 and 2 year contracts. The players that they valued for a long time of the Payne, the Allen, the Scary Terrys ended up getting longer term deals. But when you talk about free agents, some of the bigger names for Washington this year that are up for free agency is, Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller,
Cam Curl,
safety, Cam Curl. Got I don't know what they're going to do or how they're evaluating, but even Jacoby Brissett, do you want somebody like him sitting in the back talking to the young QB? I mean, is there value in that? And then you've got your next tier players, your Cody Bartons, your Lucas, Jeremy Reeves. I mean, some of these guys at best are going to be role players. And even somebody like Antonio Gibson that had a larger role, what's that?
But you need depth. You need these guys.
You need depth. But again, I always say when somebody says, "Oh, do you want to re-sign Antonio Gibson?" I'll just use him as an example. My first question is, at what price? Right. And Ken, Knucklehead Ken can be cheap. Right. Right. I might not make a good owner when it comes time to paying. Right. I would struggle letting that money go. I would have to hire Adam Peters and go, "Hey man, here's my checkbook. I only have this much money in the account. You manage it how you want." But
you do spend NFL money.
It's not far from what I do with my wife, So
you do spend NFL money like it's yours, though. You don't want to pay it.
I do, man. I do. I'm. You know why? Because we've had crappy teams. And I look at it and go, I want to have money. So when somebody pans out, when the Chase Youngs of the world actually pan out, I want to have the money to get them. I don't want to be in salary cap hell.
I understand.
And when you're the worst defense in the NFL, literally the worst for a couple years now, an argument could be made that why would you bring any of them back?
Well, this goes much deeper than just being a bad defense. I think clearly coaching was lacking here in this organization.
Talent evaluation.
I don't know. Yeah, I think Washington's got some pretty good players. I don't think the roster is as bad as people make it out to be, and it may not have been as good as we thought it was going to be, but I certainly don't think it is as bad as people think it's going to be. I think some of these guys just need better coaching. I think St. Juice, the cornerback room, the guy was from high school, right? He's been for some high school dude or something that Del Rio and some guys brought over here. Jeff Scanini or whatever. Yeah, he was a big old dude out there who could probably look like he could suit up and play. But was he really good? You got to remember, he was promoted after Sam Mills left, which Sam Mills apparently has some issues, and I don't even know what happened there. So I think coaching was an issue. I don't think Emmanuel Forbes is as bad as, the kid didn't forget how to play football. So I think schematically, coaching, technique, I think a lot of that stuff is lacking, which again is why I'm excited about the coaching staff, because I think there's a wealth of knowledge that is on this staff that is I think you're gonna see a couple players that are gonna play better this year, and I think it's just simply because coaching is going to be better, and they're probably gonna scheme these guys to be able to put them in a position to make plays. At least that's my belief. I just don't think St. Juice, Manuel Forbes, Quan Martin, Cam Curl, I just don't think all these guys are just that bad. I don't. I refuse to believe that we tended to be the team that drafted all the terrible players. I don't believe that. So, but we'll see. We'll see. We have to sign some of our free agents. Adam Peters has already made the comment that they're not really interested in franchising anyone.
Right.
So they're going to be negotiating. They've already had some talks with Cam Curl and his agents, and he said, and that's ongoing. You can read between the lines. I'm going to take that to be we're not franchising him, so we're either going to come to an agreement or they're going to let him walk. But
Right.
there's a lot of guys out there this year on the free agent market that would fill the holes and needs that we have. And just like we underestimated the reach that Dan Quinn had among football circles, here's the benefit of this. Washington has brought in coaches from all over, from former head coaches and coordinators. So guess what? These guys are going to have firsthand knowledge of many of the players that are free agents. And even if that guy wasn't on their team, every coach knows another coach.
Or they
Every
scouted
coach has been on the staff with someone else. If
right?
nothing else, it's a phone call. It's a phone call over to Carolina and ask somebody in Carolina, what can you tell me about Burns? Someone on the staff can make a call to Minnesota and ask about Daniil Hunter, right? Somebody can call Houston. I mean, we have enough people, former coaches, who can tell you exactly about that player, his strengths, his weakness, and what he's like as a teammate. So that's another thing that by having Dan Quinn and the coaching staff that he's put together, not everybody can do that. Not everyone's going to have the ability to do that this season. So again, players in free agency, and then of course doing it through the draft. Man, I love it. Ken, I'm telling you. Remember, I told you if they don't turn this thing around, I'm walking away. They look like I'm walking away.
Ladies and gentlemen, Knucklehead Reggie, he's not going anywhere. We'll move on. So I mentioned a handful of the names of people that are free agents. And I think when you look at how you build a team, obviously you want to have a quarterback, but outside of the quarterback,
let me ask you this real quick, Ken, before you get into potential free agents that are on our team.
Right.
Is there any 1, 2, or 3 of our own free agents that you'd like to see them re-sign?
If I
let me rattle off some names.
Okay,
just
go ahead.
See if anyone. Okay, Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller, Jacoby Brissett, Cody Barton, Cornelius Lucas, Jeremy Reeves, George Slott, F.A. Obata, Antonio Gibson, Cam Curl, James Smith, William Casey Toohill. Tops the list.
So there's players that I would like to keep, but not at the value that I think that they're going to go and what the market is going to pay them. So I'll give an example. I would still like under Cliff Kingsbury to see Curtis Samuel be a tool. I think he's a talent. You know, the first year he was injured basically the entire season, out for the year. But I don't think that he was used well by Turner, and then EB used him more. But I think if Curtis Samuel goes to the right team, his production is going to dramatically improve.
Okay.
But I think Washington is going to evaluate and say, hey, at the price that he's going to go, we can probably draft somebody that can do the same thing at a.
I understand, but we're not trying to negotiate contracts. You and I are not just obviously signing these guys at a good contract that's good for everybody. Anyone jumps out where you go, you know what? I hope they re-sign him, and I hope they re-sign him.
If I don't know what the cost is going to be, but I wouldn't mind keeping Kendall Fuller around. I think he's in the secondary. He was probably the most consistent the last couple of years. I know for whatever reason, because the first year or two, Cam Curl had a couple good years. Last year and this year, he's been burned and lost and turned around, looking left, looking right. What happened? so many times, I'm not interested in Cam Curl. You could say it's coaching, but I mean, he just lost consistently as much or more than anybody in the secondary this past season, and really going into the last half of last year also.
So let me make sure I got this right. You want to keep Kendall, but you're not interested in re-signing Cam Curl.
I'd be interested in Fuller. I'm not interested in Cam Curl.
Cam Curl. Okay. What about Joey Sly?
Sign him and bring in some competition.
All right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm signing him, I'm bringing in another kicker for a competition. Antonio Gibson, man, that's just. I could go either way on that. I know he's not going to command a huge amount of money because running backs don't. Even the big name running backs don't command that much money. I think you'd be able to get him for 2.5 to 3.5 million. I'll leave that up to the evaluation. Can you pick up another running back in the 5th round that can do just as much as he? If they think they can, then you let him walk.
I'm over the Antonio Gibson experiment. I
don't have a problem either way with him. But I think some of the role players, if I'm looking at them for depth, I don't have a problem with a couple of the Obata, the Casey Toohill.
I need Casey. I want to see him do the gritty.
I mean, I'm not interested in Pringle. I'm not interested in Crowder. I would hope that we can bring Crowder. What's that?
You might need Crowder special teams, man.
I was going to say, well, that's what he did. I would think that we could bring in somebody. Heck, even free agent. I'm sorry, not free. An undrafted free agent that can return punts. If that's all you're doing. So I'm not trashing on Jamison Crowder, because when he came in, he did a good job at what he was asked to do.
He did.
Again, if you're paying him the veteran minimum type, around the $1.5 million, okay, I don't have a problem. I mean, he's over 30, about 31 by the time the season starts. So, that his quickness isn't what it was 5 or 6, 7 years ago. I know Reggie is just as quick as he was when he was 19 years old, but that's few and far between.
I am. Don't get twisted. I can still get out there and go, man.
Man, you will see how quick and fast he is. If you reach for that last chip, his hand goes lightning fast and reaches across the table and snags that chip before you can get it and dip it in your own salsa.
Man, I don't even like chips.
You don't like chips, ladies and gentlemen.
I like Lay's and Pringles.
You haven't sat at my table and watched him, and then I get the chips, and you gonna put salt on them? Or you gonna put them on? You gonna put them on? Or do you want me to just put it on my half? And I'm like, Reggie, just salt them up however you want. I'll have them however you want, man. I don't want to get the bear angry, on the chips. So
what is wrong with you, man?
There's people that listen to this content that can verify most of my stories. Now, maybe not all of them, but most of my stories. When it comes to the bar, I've got receipts, Reg. I've got receipts. All right.
There's an ounce of truth to a lot of your stories. Boy, there's an ounce.
No. There's enough truth. That's all we got to stick with. There's enough truth. So what about you? What are some? Name 2 or 3 players that you would be disappointed in if they left.
That I would be disappointed if they left.
I mean, a vast majority you'd accept it and be fine.
Yeah. Many of these guys I'm okay with,
right,
if they leave or re-sign them. But I think the guy on the list that I ran through here that I think probably be the most valuable is probably going to be Jacoby Brissett. I would like to re-sign him.
Right.
There's been some rumors recently about. I don't know how true it is because it just came out during the combine thing, but apparently some teams are interested in trading for Sam Howell. And if you can get a 3rd round pick for Sam Howell, I say trade him. Keep Jacoby Brissett, teach him how to let him teach the young guy because they're probably going to get some young quarterback in here. Excuse me, teach that kid how to be a pro, what it's like to be in the NFL, and what a guy to have in your corner if you're a young rookie coming in. And everyone talks about what type of a teammate Jacoby Brissett is. So of all those guys, I would say Cody Barton. I mean, not Cody Barton, Jacoby Brissett. The second guy on my list would be Cornelius Lucas. Cornelius Lucas, for some reason, on the Ron Rivera, was always there when you needed him. When we needed him to fill in at guard and tackle, he would always come in and play well. But yet, every time they would always replace him back with one of the other guys.
Right.
But he's a free agent, and I think, man, he'd be a great swing tackle and a great depth guy. And maybe if you give him enough reps, he could be the starter. But
the only downside I would say on Lucas is by the time the season starts, he'll be 33 years old.
He's that old?
Yeah. Cornelius Lucas will be 33, I think, at the beginning of the season. And 33 at different positions, quarterback, that's not old. Offensive line, that's your knees and everything.
Well, I'll say this. Then maybe he could be a good backup then because he maybe can't be a starter. I didn't realize he was that old, but so then re-sign him and he can be a backup for you, a depth piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
But between Gibson, Samuel, yeah, whatever. Cam Curl.
You're a Cam Curl fan.
No, that's not true. It's just that he's an enigma for me, meaning he plays well and then all of a sudden he doesn't. And I'm at this point where I don't know if what we saw last year is really Cam Curl or the guy we've seen in the past. Because prior to last year, we were all excited about Cam Curl. And I don't know if Jack Del Rio and his defensive scheme just did not allow these guys to all be successful, whether that's Jamin Davis and all these guys. I don't know what happened. But Cam Curl, whether it was Derek Forrest getting injured early in the year, Jeremy Reeves playing safety, I just don't know. And so I don't know if Cam Curl has just peaked or is there still more to him and he just wasn't able to be successful. And can Joe Witt and those guys all of a sudden put Cam in a spot back there with the return of Derek Forrest and Quan Martin back there, and all of a sudden we see a totally different player.
Right.
Does he play down in the box with Jamin Davis a little bit more and they blitz him? I'm not ready to give up on him, but I'm not willing to pay him the $17 million a year, which is what I think the franchise tag is. So if they brought him back, I'm okay with it. I mean, I like him, but I don't know that I'm like, man, they gotta resign Cam Curl. Prior to last year, I was in that camp. After this year, I'm like, I don't know. I truly don't know. But the guy that I think that I really would like would be Jacoby Brissett. Would probably be my number one guy to bring back because I'm pretty sure they're probably going to go quarterback here.
And you got to remember also the last probably 5-6 games, probably about the time Del Rio was fired, we saw a lot of one of the biggest playmakers was Quan Martin, who had struggles for one reason or another at the first 2 or 3 games of the year and was seeing some limited playing time. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, whether he got it, whether the system adjusted to him, whether the coach with Del Rio leaving, they gave him a chance and he stepped up and did it. Whatever it was, we started seeing.
He started to flash more, and we saw less of Emmanuel Forbes. And Quan Martin started flashing more. And it's funny because after the first 3 games, people were calling Quan a bust. This is Twitter.
Right.
Twitter.
And when they had the draft, I was, I've been skeptical of Forbes from the beginning. I'm like, okay, definitely skeptical. Waiting to see for him to prove it. Unfortunately, I'm still waiting. I was more excited when we got Quan Martin in the draft. I think he was like third round. And I thought that was a
I thought he was
good,
second round.
okay. I thought it was a good pick where we ended up getting him. And I think the talent that he brings, Dan Quinn and the team, his game will he will be one of the people that you see their game elevate dramatically next year versus this year.
Not jamming, not
I think
Daniel.
I think those are two of the bigger names, yes, that are currently on the team. I think Jamin Davis and Quan Martin are going to be the two names that you're going to see the most improvement in 2024. Because they do have the talent, the raw talent to do it, and they're going to get coached, and a defense is going to be put there to funnel things to use their skills.
Okay.
And that's what good defensive coordinators do, right? It's not just this defense. If it is just this defense, then you better be signing and drafting players 100% specific to that. When you bring somebody in and you tell them they're a tweener kind of guy, well, you better be prepared to use him as a tweener. They like they did with what's his name that ended up getting cut from the Giants.
Landon Collins?
Safety Collins. Yeah, like they did a little bit with Collins. So time will tell. There's a whole new staff, and we'll see how they work things out.
Okay. Well, one last question for you.
Yeah.
Free agency, quarterback, Kirk Cousins. You interested?
No.
Why not? Tell me why.
That's the wrong answer. Why? Because I need for one, he's not going to be a difference maker. Okay. And I want something long term with having the number 2 pick. That doesn't guarantee it, right? Whoever we get, we move up to 1, we drop down to 5, whatever. But this is an opportunity to evaluate and get the best possible quarterback that you think is going to be there. Obviously, if you don't think the guy is worth that pick, then you have to maneuver and move out of it. But no, I'm not interested in Kirk Cousins, especially at the price that he's going to be commanding. No.
Okay. So I'll just give my quick no, not interested either. But there's a lot of, again, on Twitter, people saying, they want Kirk. I'm like, absolutely not. Next question. So then you're talking about bringing in a young guy. Where are you? It's probably not going to be Caleb Williams. So are you in the Drake May or are you in the Jake Daniels camp? I won't hold you to this now.
Yeah. And I'll give you, my honest 2 cents is when I initially looked at those 2 players, I was in the Drake May camp. I liked what I saw. He's a bigger pocket passer that could run. He's not one of these
He's
Kyler
athletic.
Murray,
right. He's just
Lamar
athletic.
Jackson type of runners, but he can get out and run and pick up that first down. He's not going to take the length of the field, but he's going to have no problem picking up a first down type of thing. And then as people started talking more and more on Daniels, initially when I was looking at him, I didn't like what I saw. The more that I've watched him, the more I like him. I guess it would come down to what is your style of offense that you're looking to try to run? Because they're not, they're not the same quarterback, and now you just have to evaluate which one is better in that style. They're 2 different style quarterbacks. So I think that's part of the evaluation is how do you want to run your offense? And then does one of those guys fit it? Maybe they don't. Maybe the kid from Washington suits you better, and you can pick him up later on. You trade back or you do whatever to get there. If I had to pick right now, I'm leaning. I'm changing my mind from a month ago and leaning more towards Daniels. There's I think there's a higher upside and a lower downside with Daniels. But I think one of the things that I noticed with him is the difference between his just the last season playing and the year prior. His improvement dramatically increased. So he's still on that learning curve, and I think Washington can get him. The right staff is there to continue his learning curve and go that route. So that's my answer at the moment.
Okay.
Yourself?
Full disclosure, man, I don't watch a whole lot of college football to be able to give a true, honest opinion here. But for the sake of this conversation, what little I know and what I have seen and read, I'll just give you this. Both of these guys have some red flags.
Yes.
But I know that we're probably going to pick one. And I just hope that it turns out to be the right one and that this kid really works out good. The thing about Jake Daniels that concerns me is the thing you have to like is the fact that he seemed to have gotten better. But I always question guys that play on what I call the blue chip program.
Right.
The Ohio States, the LSU, the Alabamas, right? Did his performance improve because he got better as a player? Or did his play improve because he left Arizona State and started playing with guys that are going to be playing on Sundays at LSU, including his receivers?
Two receivers that he played with, for those that don't know, are probably going to be in the first round.
Damn right.
And let me piggyback on that just so for them. And then when you watch film, his offensive line at times we would have loved for Sam Howell last year to have as much time as he had at LSU sometimes on his pass plays. But go ahead.
So my point is, we're just looking at the numbers, and everyone says, man, he has improved over his college career. But he also changed school. He went from Arizona State, Pac-10, to LSU. SEC, guys play on his team are going to be playing on Sunday. And I don't know the answer to that. And that's why I say I can't give an honest opinion, but that's the thing in the back of my mind is, so which is it? Is it a little bit of both? Now, if we're going to pick Jake Daniels, I really hope it's just that it didn't matter who he was throwing to, and it's just the kid has just improved, and that's a testament to his work ethic. And man, I hope we get that guy. And while I think a lot of people ignoring that a little bit is because Jake Daniels versus Drake May, Jake Daniels looks more like today's NFL quarterback. The mobility, the off-script plays, a lot of the razzle-dazzle. And I know that makes me sound old as hell when I use a phrase like razzle-dazzle, but I don't know what else to call it. But I
would have let it pass until you said it a second time. The old razzle dazzle. See,
I know. I knew what I was saying when I said it, but hell, whatever. But all of that running around and doing all the things, the off script plays and things, that's today's NFL, and everybody wants that because that's what we see on Sundays between your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allens, and your Lamar Jacksons. But I can't help but say, because again, I haven't watched a lot of film. So is he just creative? Or is this shades of RG3? Where all of a sudden you get it back there, Jayden, and all of a sudden it's not there, and you just tuck the ball and just take off running. And maybe you didn't need to run right there, Jayden. Maybe you needed to just kind of step to the left or step to the right in the pocket or step up in the pocket, and then you got Terry or Jahan, somebody running down there, and this could have been a 60-yard touchdown pass.
Right.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
And the thing about, and I'll just say this, and with Drake May looks a little bit, people talk about his accuracy. Can that improve? I don't know, man. You look at, they say he's got the prototypical size, which is great. But how many of these prototypical guys are really excelling in the NFL, in today's NFL? So I don't know the answer. But to give you an answer, I'm going to say Jake Daniels, because I'm going to hope that the kid can learn. Because as I said earlier, if there's going to be a quarterback with the best chance of success coming into this year's season, it's going to be in Washington. You got 4 guys that are going to work with you in terms of the coaching staff to give you the best chance to be successful. And so if I'm going to need a guy that looks like what today's NFL looks like, because the defensive ends are out here killing people because they're very athletic, the linebackers are out here crazy, then you need a guy that can be mobile. So I'm going to say, give me Jake Daniels, but I don't know. Hell, just give me that. So, because he's got a little razzle dazzle, Ken.
He's got the little razzle dazzle. Everybody wants a quarterback with some razzle dazzle. I will say my 2 cents on doing some evaluation of Daniels would be, for the reasons you gave with him being at a blue chip school, if I'm going to counter that, that means he had to play against defenses like Alabama defense, like Georgia defense, like the SEC defenses, period, are predominantly better than when he was, out west at Arizona State.
That's fair enough.
But when I started looking at Daniels, what I kind of did as I started watching is I don't watch the highlights. First of all, if that's all you watch is the highlights, you're watching the wrong film if you're trying to get any evaluation from him, because the highlights are just that. It's all the good things that he's doing. Find a YouTube video that shows every play or every throw of certain games. And then even when I take that, when players are wide open, it's not that I don't give it any credit, but if you're just chucking the ball and you got the guy beat, whether it's a deep ball, whether it's a crossing, and you got the guy beat by 5 yards, that's not a challenge for a quarterback. I mean, unfortunately, we've seen some quarterbacks that miss those throws, but it's not as big of a deal as, a guy doing, it's 3rd and 7, and some guy, the receiver runs an 8-yard little hook, and you just pop it in there between 2 defenders. Right. That's a better read, better throw, better evaluation. So pay attention as you're watching of him hitting those throws, what I call NFL throws, as opposed to college throws. A lot of quarterbacks can make college throws. Look at the NFL throws. Look at him. Look one way. That receiver isn't open. Oh, I got to go this way. I got to check down. I got to do those types of things. When I throw it to the back, that's rolling out of the backfield, am I hitting him in stride, or am I throwing it behind him, and I'm making it easy on these players to catch it and go? So just kind of something to keep in mind as you evaluate not only him, but the other ones. Across the NFL, it's kind of universal that Caleb Williams will be the number 1 quarterback. What would you, and let's say he's significantly better from an evaluation perspective than May or Daniels, what would you be willing to give up, Reg, to move up to number 1?
When it comes to draft capital, I'm going to say I'm probably about as cheap when it comes to draft capital as you are with money.
And free
So,
agency. Yeah.
so I'm not really interested in giving a whole lot. So if we trade this year's first, so now you're talking about switching from 1 to 2, or in our case 2 to 1, maybe a 1 next year, and maybe a third. I'm not interested in giving a ransom to go at one spot. Um, I'm just, and I say that because we are a team with needs. Now let's just say we were a team that was already winning 8, 9, 10 games, and this pick that we're getting was because of a trade that we did 2 years ago. Kind of like how the reason Chicago has this pick now is because of a trade they did with Carolina, and Carolina was
Right.
terrible. So now they're
Right.
back in this spot. If that was the case, I'd be more likely to do it. But in this case, we have our own holes to fill. We've got an opportunity to hit reset here. And so I'm not interested in trading away and mortgaging the future. And I know someone will say, well, hey, if you believe that Caleb Williams is the next great thing in the NFL, then it's all worth it. And I get that. I really do. Because if all of a sudden Caleb Williams is the next thing, and all of a sudden we're never going to be picking in the top 5 for many, many years because this kid is going to really take this team away, then you're not worried about those picks. But this goes back to I don't know enough about him to even be able to say, but it just maybe that's the old school part of me, man, that just
Right.
says you can't just mortgage the future for one guy. And
I,
but this
I,
goes back to
yeah.
where I trust Cliff Kingsbury and Adam Peters and those guys to know what to look for. And if anybody has any inside information to Caleb Williams, it's going to be Cliff Kingsbury, who was just on the USC campus
Right.
a few months ago. And he's going to know everything that Washington is going to want to know about Caleb Williams. What kind of teammate he is, what kind of leader he is, whether or not this kid is just relying on his talent, he just likes what football gives him, or does he love playing football? Is he a grinder? Is he in
Work
that
ethic. Yeah.
that work ethic, that Russell Wilson, that Peyton Manning, that Pat Mahomes? Is that guy that just grinds foot because he loves football? Cliff Kingsbury can answer that question without
Right.
even having a pro day. He knows already. So if they believe that he's that guy and they decide to want to trade, as I said earlier, I'm not gonna contradict myself. Then I'm gonna trust that they know what they're doing. So, but if they was asking me what to trade him, to answer your question, I'd say maybe swapping position this year, another first, and probably a third. But I'm not doing more. I'm not giving you a shit ton of. I mean to keep cursing here, but I'm not giving you a buttload of first round picks, man. Them day that you can, yeah, you can miss me with that.
Yeah. I don't think we will, and I'm hesitant to do something like that. I will agree with you. The counter that I would give on that is that you talked about it. If I truly feel that this guy is a franchise quarterback, and while there's no guarantees in the NFL, if I feel like, man, this is about as close of a guarantee of having a top 10 quarterback, um, I'm going to give up. I'm going to give up the farm. Um, the positive side of if we had to give some draft picks are kind of to your point. If he makes a difference and adds 3 or 4 wins, all of a sudden next year's number 1 draft pick in 2025 isn't a top 5. It's a number 17 pick. So it's not as high of a value. Yes, you're still losing the 17th player in the draft. But along with that, Washington is in good shape this year and next year financially for free agency. So where we do have a lot of needs, you can address some of those through free agency because you've got the money to do it. If you were tighter on the salary cap, I mean, there's 5 or 6, 7 teams right now that are already above the salary cap. When you start making those kinds of moves, you're trading major draft capital and you don't have money for free agency. you definitely better have a solid team put in place because you're not going to be making any dramatic moves. If we end up giving up, a couple number ones and a couple number twos, we've got the finances to be able to put together a team and make the changes we need to through free agency as well as the draft. So,
Okay. Well, as
if
I
all of a
said,
sudden we go that route, again, I think the asking price is probably going to be steeper than what Washington wants to pay, but
agreed.
we will see.
But again, I'm gonna trust the law firm of Peters and Quinn,
Yep.
and I'm gonna roll with whatever decision they make, and just I'm gonna roll with it, man. I'm gonna support it. So if they think that going after Caleb Williams is the move, let's go do it. Let's get it.
Yeah, I think without going into any trying to pick a certain player or person or anything here, I think when we see free agency, more free agency than the draft, not that we won't address it in the draft, but I think in free agency, I think you're going to see offensive and defensive line, and probably linebacker. Those are going to be the changes. If you look at Dan Quinn and the places that he has been and how he puts together his defenses, it relies on pressure. He's got studs somewhere. And we talked about Quan Martin and we talked about Jamin Davis possibly improving and becoming those players. But I think come free agency, we're going to end up getting a defensive end that has a track record of producing. Don't know the name, but I that might be the first big name free agent. If I had to say we're going in some direction of free agency, I would say it's going to be a defensive end that's going to be the first big signing.
Well, the big names out there is Daniil Hunter, Brian Burns, and Josh Allen.
Right.
So let's do it.
Hey,
let's do it, man.
Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Yeah, we talked about that, but just to touch base real quick before we wrap things up, free agency starts the 13th. Probably, we'll do a podcast definitely before then, especially as we get closer. We'll probably start hearing some rumblings and rumors even before. Maybe not as much names, but kind of an approach that they're going to be taking. And then the draft is April 25th on a Thursday, prime time. Maybe we'll be number one. Maybe we'll be number two pick. But time will tell.
Well, let me just say this. Supposedly, Chicago made a comment. I heard on one of the podcasts that Chicago's GM was talked to at the draft and made a comment that whatever decision they're going to make, they're going to make it sooner than later because they want to make sure they do right by Justin Fields. And so they talked about when they traded away the number one pick to Carolina last year. I think they did it on like March 8th or the 10th or something last year. So that being the case, whether they decide to keep Justin Fields or trade Justin Fields, it's something that they want to do sooner rather than later and potentially before free agency starts. So we may have an idea what Chicago is going to do with the number one pick here within the next week or two.
Yeah, I think they're taking Caleb Williams, and
I think so too.
And they'll get what they think, probably get a second for Justin Fields. Yeah, they lost their second when they got Montez Sweat, so that currently they don't have a second. So they've got 2 firsts, and if they get a second for him, they're doing pretty good. The first 2 days of the draft, right there. Anything else? Oh, I know one other thing related to the salary cap. I'll name 3 players. You tell me whether we should cut them or keep them for salary cap reasons. Are they worth it, or should we cut them? Start off with the biggest, and I'll go salary wise from largest to smallest of 3 potential names that would make sense to consider. I'm not going to say to do it, but to consider. Number 1, Charles Leno. Cut him or keep him?
I'm going to go with option C, restructure.
Restructure. Okay. And he's a little bit older also. He's 30 plus. Logan Thomas.
Cut him.
Okay. And Andrew Wiley.
Definitely cut.
Okay. There you go.
He should have already been cut.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with all three of those.
No, I think you keep Charles. You probably unless you go out and sign a big time left tackle, I say you restructure him.
Yeah, I think if you can restructure and add a year, this coming year and add another year, that suits both. The cheap knucklehead again.
I think the poor play of the entire offensive line highlighted a little bit more struggles of Charles Leno. I don't think Charles played bad. I just think the collective unit was so bad that it highlighted and made him look even worse. But I think if you get some competent quality interior, then I think Charles will be fine on the by himself. But that's why I said I think you restructure Charles Leno, but you cut Logan Thomas and Wiley.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Logan Thomas just fell off, man. I don't know what
I think it really got him.
Injuries and age just catching up with them. So, and that leaves a big hole that at tight end that we expected somebody last year to fill, and they didn't. So it'll be interesting to see what Washington does at tight end this coming year also. But we'll be around to talk about that and everything else.
Lots happening.
Reggie, you got anything else for today?
I do not, man. Just glad to be back, and stay tuned, folks. Good things are coming.
Absolutely. And until next time.
Smoke weed every day.
Everybody, have a great day. Go out there and razzle dazzle somebody. I don't even know what that means. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing.